right, today we're going to look at lesson 7.3, special products of polynomials. But before we get into today's lesson, I want to review what we learned in 7.2 on Friday, okay? We learned how to multiply binomials and trinomials. Can anyone remember the method that we learned when we are multiplying two binomials? What was the method that we learned to use to speed up the process? FOIL. All right, very good. So let's review the letters in FOIL. The F stands for what? The first term. So each set of parentheses, we take the first term and we multiply them together. What did the O stand for? Outside. The outside terms, all right? Not outside the parentheses, but on the outside of the problem. What did the I stand for? Inside. The inside terms. The two terms that were right there beside each other. We multiply those together. And what did the L stand for? Last. The last term in each set of parentheses got multiplied together. And then, of course, once we FOILed, then we had like terms in the center of the problem that we had to combine to finish it off. So that method only worked if we were multiplying two binomials. Remind me what a binomial is.
Two terms.
An expression with two terms. Now, what happens when I'm multiplying a binomial times a trinomial? Well, first of all, a trinomial has how many terms? Three. So what was the method I had to use when I was multiplying a binomial times a trinomial? The distributive property. Very good, okay? Now, again, I'm reminding you of this because in tomorrow's class assignment, you're going to have to remember what you learned in 7.2. I'm also reminding you of this because what you're going to learn today is shortcuts. Instead of having to use FOIL, which would work in the problems I'm going to show you today, these are special products. These are special binomials. And because they are special, there are shortcuts that you can use to multiply them, okay? But you're going to have to learn to recognize the problem as special, and you're going to have to learn the steps to solving them. So that is what we're going to focus on. First of all, the essential question. What are the patterns in the special products? Here are your special products. A plus B times A minus B, A plus B squared, and A minus B squared. So let's talk about these special products. I want you to grab your highlighter. We're going to highlight some things. First of all, I want you to highlight square of a binomial pattern, okay? Because I want that to stand out. The first type of special product is one where the binomial is being squared. Now, if something is being squared, it's being raised to what power? The second, okay? And you can see that from these formulas. We have A plus B squared, and we have A minus B squared. But notice there's one binomial, and it's being raised to the second power. You've got to recognize that. Once you recognize that, then you say, oh wait, that has a shortcut. Okay, so what is the shortcut? Well, pick up your highlighter, and I want you to highlight what I have in purple right here. Okay, it says square the first term, multiply and double the two terms together, and then square the second term. Okay, those are the steps to your shortcut. So let's talk about them. Let's break them apart and look at what I've given you as the pattern, okay, or the formula. So first of all, I want you to notice, when the problem is A plus B squared, what is the first sign in your answer going to be? What's the sign in your original problem right here? An addition sign. What is the first sign in your answer going to be? Plus. Now, look at what happens when the original problem is a subtraction problem. What's the first sign in that answer? Subtraction, okay? So, the original problem is going to help you to know what the first sign in your answer should be. But what do you recognize about the second sign? No matter how the problem begins, what do you notice about the second sign in the solution or the answer? It's positive, okay? The second sign will always be positive. The first sign, though, is going to depend on the original problem. Now, let's talk about these steps. First of all, we're supposed to square the first term. Nobody has problems with that, okay? Nobody even has problems understanding they're going to square the second term. Do you know where the problem comes in? they forget about the middle term. They try to square the first term, square the second term, and be done with the problem. But where is the middle term? Okay, it can't just disappear. Okay? It can't just go away. So where is it? Here's how we find it. We multiply. So we take whatever terms are in the parentheses, we're going to multiply them and double it. Double it. Are we squaring it or are we multiplying it by 2 if we're doubling it? Multiply by 2. Okay, so be very careful. So we're going to multiply the terms together and then we're going to double our answer. And that is going to be our middle term. All right? So that's the first special product. It's when a binomial is being squared. Okay? The second kind, pick up your highlighter, is the difference of squares pattern. The difference of squares. Now, if I'm asking you to find the difference to a problem, what kind of a problem is it? The difference is the answer to what kind of a problem? Subtraction. So keep that in mind because we'll talk about that again here in a second. But look at, there's only one original problem. What is the only difference between your two binomials? It says a minus b times a plus b. The a's and the b's match. What is the only difference between the two binomials in the original problem? One is addition, one is subtraction. So when everything matches in the binomials, except the signs are different, okay, this is a difference of squares. So I want you to highlight the steps. We square the first terms, then we square the second terms. Why are we squaring them? Because they're the same term. So I'm going to multiply, literally going to multiply a times a, and then I'm going to multiply b times b, and I'm done. Here's why. If I FOIL this, the middle two terms are going to cancel out. So why waste my time FOILing if it's just going to create more work and the middle terms are going to cancel out every single time? All right? Same thing with the square of a binomial. I can FOIL them, absolutely, but it's a waste of my time. It takes more time to write the problem down and then FOIL it than it does to memorize these shortcuts. Okay? Now, notice the answer to the difference of squares pattern. There's only one option. What's the sign in the answer every single time going to be? Minus. It's the difference of squares. So it's got to be a minus sign. Not to mention, a negative times a positive is always a negative. All right, now, for those of you who are visual like me, you're probably slightly confused. So let's go put it into practice. But keep those steps right there in front of you. All right, example number 1. It says write the square of the binomial as a trinomial. So that means when we're done with this, how many terms should my answer have in it? 3. Very good. All right, now let's look at letter A. We talked about this a lot, and I want to talk about it a little bit more. Okay, we want to recognize the type of problem. When I see this binomial is raised to the second power, all right, I should automatically recognize, wait a second, this is a special product. This is not just two binomials being multiplied by each other. This is a binomial that's being raised to the second power. So let's look at the steps. What is step number 1 if I'm looking at the square of a binomial problem? What's step number 1? Square the first term. So what is the first term in this problem? X. And what is x squared? X squared. Very good. So we're going to write down x squared. Now, step number 2. I'm supposed to do what, Anthony? Be careful. Look at your notes and read exactly what we're supposed to do for step 2. Multiplying. So multiply. What are the terms in the parentheses? Multiply all your terms together. What do you get? X. Okay. Now, what am I supposed to do? I multiply and then I double. So double 7x. If I multiply 7x by 2, I get what? 14x. And there is my middle term. I multiply the terms together. That's a 7 times an x. That's 7x. I double it. 7x times 2 is 14x. There's my middle term. And then lastly, Yasmin, I'm supposed to do what? Square the second term. What is the second term? Good. Remember, all of these steps have to do with the original problem, not the answer. We're always going back to the original problem. So the second term is 7, and when you square 7, you get 49. And there is your answer. X squared plus 14x plus 49. Now, I want to prove this to you. I want to prove and I want to show you that you could take the time to FOIL this. Okay? But here's where the problem comes in when you try to FOIL this. A lot of people don't know or can't remember how to set this problem up. I want you to think back to exponents, the very basic thing about exponents. If I ask you to square 5, let's say I want you to work out 5 squared. What does that actually mean? 5 times what? 5, right? It's the base times itself. So if I'm asking you to square x plus 7, that's x plus 7 times what? X plus 7. Very good. Okay, I got x a couple hours ago. I got multiplied by 7. Okay, it confuses people. Not you guys though. Good job. All right. It's the binomial times itself. So that's the first thing. If you're going to FOIL this, you're going to have to remember it's that binomial times itself. Now, let's talk through FOIL. F is the first term. So what are the first terms that I would have to multiply together? X times x, which is x squared. All right. Then the outside terms. What are my outside terms? 7 and x. 7. The outside terms are x and 7. So that's 7x. The I stands for inside. What are my inside terms? 7x. So 7x. And then L stands for last. And what are my last terms? 7 and 7. What's 7 times 7? 49. Well, now I notice the middle has like terms. So I'm not done because I have to combine those like terms in the middle. And so I get x squared plus 14x plus 49. Is that not the exact same answer that I just got with my shortcut? Okay. So foiling is possible. We're multiplying 2 binomials. So we technically can FOIL this. All right. But why take the time if we can learn the shortcut? The shortcut is so much quicker. All right, now let's look at letter B and letter C. I want you at your table to take about 60 seconds to 90 seconds. That's how fast this should go. I want you to work both B and C. Let's look at letter B. Joshua, Eisenberg, what is the first thing that you guys did for letter B?
Square 4.
Square 4x, and what did you guys get?
4x squared.
Be careful. You got to square each part.
Wait.
16x squared. Perfect. I am squaring the first term, which is 4x. So 4 squared is 16, and x squared is x squared. All right. Amiri, what did you guys do next? Now, before we go any further, let's talk about this, okay? If the sign in my original problem is a minus sign, what is the first sign in my answer going to be?
Minus.
So let's go ahead and bring that down. And now when we try to multiply the terms, we don't have to worry about 4x times negative y. We can just worry about 4x times y. So, Amiri, when you multiply 4x times y, you get what? 4xy. Perfect. Now double that, right? 4xy, if I double that, gives me what? 4xy gives me what? 8xy. Perfect. And because I already brought down the minus sign, I don't have to worry about it anymore. Okay? So 4x times y is 4xy. When I double that, I get 8xy. And then lastly, Anthony, you were supposed to do what? The second term, which is what? Okay. What's the second term in the problem? Y. So square that, and what do you get? Y squared. Okay. And what is my sign? What kind of y squared is it? Positive or negative? What did we talk about at the very beginning? If you go back to the formulas at the very beginning, the second sign is always what? Positive. It's got to be, because even if I have a negative sign, a negative times a negative is a positive. Okay? So 16x squared minus 8xy equals, plus y squared. How many of you had the correct answer? All right. Great. Let's look at letter C. What was the first thing, Noah, that you guys did for letter C? Square the first term, which is 3m, and what did you get? 9m squared. Perfect. All right. Sue, what was the next thing you guys did?
Double 3m.
Okay, multiply 3m times n. What is our sign going to be? What's our that we're going to bring down? Okay, plus. The original problem has a plus sign, so our first sign will be plus. So 3m times n is 3m times n, and then you doubled that to get what? 6mn. Perfect. And then Michael, how did you finish this? What was the last thing you had to do?
Square n.
Okay, the second term squared, which is n, so what is n squared?
N squared.
N squared. Positive n squared? Yes, always. The second sign will always be positive. How many of you got this one correct? Awesome. Now, let's look at example number 2. These instructions simply say find the product. And this is what you're going to be used to seeing on quizzes and tests. So this is why it's so important for you to be able to identify, wait a second, instead of foiling this, this is a special product. So looking at letter A, what is the only difference between these binomials?
Sign.
The signs are the only difference. So rather than sitting there and wasting my time foiling and realizing that the middle two terms cancel and I don't need them anyways, I want you to recognize this is the difference of squares. If this is the difference of squares, there's 2 things I have to do to get the answer. First thing I have to do, I have to square the first term. So x times x is what?
X squared.
X squared. Then I've got to square the second term. What's negative 10 times positive 10? Negative 100. And I am finished. I'm done. Can I sit there and foil? Yes. Yes, I can. But the middle 2 terms are going to cancel. It's going to be a positive 10x and a negative 10x, and it's going to cancel anyways. So why would I waste my time? Okay? Also, the answer will always be a subtraction problem. It has to be. A negative times a positive is a negative. All right? Take a minute, literally 60 seconds, and answer letter B and letter C. Let's look at letter B. Trevin, what do we do first? First of all, what's the only difference between these binomials?
The negative.
The positive and the negative sign. So we know this is a difference of squares, so we can multiply it very quickly. What did you guys multiply first together? X times, which is?
X squared.
Good. X times x is x squared. What did you guys multiply together second?
3.
That's it?
3y.
Okay. So 3y times negative 3y equals what?
9y squared.
Okay, what kind of 9y squared? A positive times a negative is always a negative. Very good. Very good. All right. And then lastly, TJ, what did you guys do first on letter C? 2x times 2x, and you got 4x squared. And then what did you guys do? 1 times negative 1 gives me a negative 1. And that is my final answer. Now, again, if this will help you, okay, essentially you have just done FOIL, but you've only done the F and the L. You have not done the O and the I because they're not necessary, because they're going to cancel out. So for difference of squares, you are foiling, but you're just skipping the O and the I. All right, and that is lesson 7.3.